Hey everybody, it's Mark Yegge. Welcome to another AI news briefing. And I want to just kind of go over what's going on. This has been a big week in AI, and AI is taking off, right? So it's an exponential technology, and our brains can't get our brains around exponential things. And that's okay. But I could tell you that if you've been following AI like I have, if you've been involved in agents and GPTs and workflows and chips and loops, I'll tell you, this month has been crazy. June has just been crazy. Well, this week is no different. So, the theme for this week is we've got export shutdowns, government intervention in AI. We got some stuff going on that I'm not sure I really like, but I'm going to try to keep my political views out of it. Maybe I won't. I don't know. Anyway, here are 5 stories that moved the market this week. First of all, the export shutdown. Fable and Mythos were basically yanked offline by Anthropic. Why? I'll tell you in just a second, but basically it's a little bit of government intervention. The number two story is model pileup. Lots of models coming to the market. New Chat GPT 5.6, not that great. Gemini 3.5 Pro, not that great. And Opus 4.8, it's like been out for a month, pretty darn good. Number three is the IPO money wave. This is my bailiwick, but I love to talk about how investments are affecting AI. It's a big bubble that's growing up right before our eyes, and it's gonna at some point it's gonna pop. But until then, it is the future. It's now. All that kind of stuff. There's 3 giants basically chasing the same amount of capital, and I'll talk about those in a second. I got a lot to cover, so I'm going to try to talk fast so you can stick with me. You don't need to speed this up. Maybe you will, but you don't need to. Talent and market share, we'll talk about how a transformer jumped ship, and then policy and geopolitics. China, Colorado, and the EU are going live. Here we go. All right, Washington pulled the plug on Frontier Club. Now, if you've been watching this, the big models were first it was Sonnet from Anthropic, then it was Opus, and then after Opus they put out this Mythos, but it was only out for like a week. They pulled it back because it had some security issues. And then they brought out this Fable thing, which is supposed to be like the most amazing thing. But you know what? We only got to test it out for like a week before the government said it's too powerful. And if it's so powerful, we're going to go after anybody that's using it in the United States. And so Anthropic's like, well, we can't prevent people from using it, so they pulled the whole thing off the market. That means you and I don't get to use it. And now they've kind of pushed it back in a little bit, and Mythos, for example, is used by some people, and basically it's gate kept now by the government and the big money. And so, like George Carlin said a long time ago, it's a big club and you and I ain't in it. And so I think that's what's happening with the most powerful, coolest technology that we've ever seen. But you know what? Some of the other models are pretty darn good. Opus 4.8 is good. ChatGPT 5.5 and 5.6 are pretty good. And if we can get our hands on them and use them without flaws, like for us, this is what we need. The most powerful stuff is going to be starting to get kept, and it's going to get more expensive. All right. June 12th, there was a shutdown. That was the export control directive that basically took both models offline. It was quote unquote voluntary by Anthropic, but they really didn't have a choice. And the mechanism is BIS is informed by a letter, and then foreign access now needs a validated license. So really anybody that's using, including people that are using it in the United States, even if they're foreign nationals, that's a problem. And so they just basically pulled it off the market and are now just trying to seep it out in a nerfed fashion. The reach is what really spooked people here. The order blocks any foreign national insider outside the U.S. from accessing the models, including Anthropic's own employees. So the theme here is, let's go back a couple of months. Anthropic, was talking about how they didn't want the government to be intervening. And then the government, then they intervened in the government. Remember during the Iran war, the government was like, hey, we want to use, Anthropic's latest models. And they were like, no, we don't agree with bombing. And so the government said, okay, fine, let's go the other way. You're not going to be able to put your Anthropic stuff anywhere, right? And so they kind of kicked the anthill, right? Maybe they started a thing. Maybe the government's just being very neutral. But I think that the government's got it out a little bit for Anthropic. What does that do? It leaves room for OpenAI. It leaves room for Google. It leaves room for, XAI from Elon Musk and SpaceX. Okay, so that's what's going on there. Now, Mythos still is coming back, and the irony is interesting, right? So Fable 5 stays kind of dark for you and me, but there are a few big companies right now that are allowed to use it. That's not really right, is it? But anyway, Mythos cleared June 26 for a small set of U.S. critical infrastructure organizations only. So Mythos is being used, and Fable rumored to be being used by a big few companies, and then the government's going to kind of let them come back. So that you're seeing the government stick their claws into AI. Now, on the longer scale, and I'm not going to really get into this, here, the government just signed, Trump signed an executive order to create a sovereign wealth fund, kind of like what Norway has, and why Norway's so wealthy is they took all the oil and they basically gave it back to the people, and that's why they have free education and all that stuff. They also have huge inflation, but that's a different story. So, now you're seeing the government may buy 10% of Anthropic, may buy 10% of OpenAI, and they want to go public this year. So there could be a case to be made. They've already bought 10% of Intel. All right. So China's Zhipu AI said its latest model matches Mythos on the exact security capability cited as the reason for the ban. See, Mythos went and said, "Hey, we can break into some of these great browsers that have been on the market for 30 years. All of a sudden, we found all these vulnerabilities." So it was really powerful. The government's like, we don't want that in the hands of bad actors. So, the same thing kind of is going on right now. So here are 2 dates that are going to decide what happens next. First of all, July 8th. That's when ID verification goes live. If you're a conspiracy theorist, I don't know if you're going to like this, but Anthropic's government ID check kicks in, and that helps them bring Fable 5 back for verified users first. What else does it do? It makes ID like a cool thing, right? Like government verification before we can use AI. So you can't use it, on an anonymous basis. I'm not sure I like that, but anyway, August 1st, the 60-day EO deadline. The cutoff tied to Frontier Model Executive Order. This is the negotiating track for a fuller restore. So you're seeing a back and forth between government allowing what AI can do. The problem is the government's been trying to gatekeep AI from China, and China has been continuing to improve, and now they're kind of ahead of us because they don't have to get censored by the government like even our own companies do, because they're kind of going around it, right? They're available on the internet, guys. I mean, it's not hard to get here. All right. So there are 3 frontier models that are piling up, one tight window. ChatGPT 5.6 is a great model. It's limited to trusted partners. Again, it's limited. Like it's not, and we're not in that club anymore, everybody. So if you've been using this stuff for a couple of years, well, now you're not like Google and some of these big, corporate people that can spend a lot of money eventually. You're being gatekept. So that's a shame. Google Gemini 3.5, it's still in preview. They've been talking about a 2 million token context window, but it's stuck in limited enterprise preview, and everybody's been waiting and waiting and waiting for Gemini 3.5 Pro. Opus 4.8 is really good. I just used it for a few minutes ago for something that I'm working on, and I tell you, it's a good model. It's expensive, but it's good. So like if you look at what was good 6 months ago, and that was Claude Sonnet 4.6, Opus is way better, and now we're kind of getting spoiled because of all these really great models on the market. All right. Let's talk about a money situation here a little bit. So projected 2026 AI IPO proceeds. This is what Goldman is estimating. I think it's low. I mean, XAI through SpaceX just raised $77 billion, I think. So they raised a bunch of it. OpenAI is going public and they want $1 trillion. Anthropic wants at least $1 trillion. And so the jump versus 2025's total is 4x, and there are 3 giants basically trading or chasing the same capital pool, right? So we already had SpaceX, go crazy on the IPO and give a lot back since then. Anthropic and OpenAI are competing for the same institutional cash, and whoever lists first is going to set the benchmark, right? Like you're going to see the valuation get set. Now, I'm not sure the valuations are going to continue to go up because I think there's a lot of open weighted and free models and low cost models that are now starting to be adopted. I think Coinbase which is a large cryptocurrency, probably the largest cryptocurrency exchange, is now using. They're going away from some of these, frontier models like OpenAI and Claude, and they're putting in, cheaper models. And so, how is a big company like that moving away from them going to affect their IPO valuation? You better believe it's going to affect it quite a bit. So they need to get public quickly, and they need to restore confidence in their models and their valuations. All right, let's talk, and I'm kind of going to wrap up here in a minute, but a big brain moves and the leaderboard loosens. So Noam Shazir, he helped write the original Transformer paper. He left Google for OpenAI this month, and Google paid to bring him back in 2024, and he left. And so there's a lot of movement going on among the big three right now, and that kind of tells you what's going on with Google. Like, I don't think Google is going to be number one, although I have a feeling they're trying to get a seat at the table to be number one. I think they're going to have to do something with OpenAI and maybe with Anthropic, but they got some good stuff going on at Google, and they are very competitive. But you could see, the models here: 46.4 ChatGPT. Claude, I'm very surprised that it still remains down here at 10%. Gemini 27.7. I don't know anybody that uses Gemini, but I know a lot of people that use the other two here. All right. Regulation went from theory to enforcement, like I just mentioned. China's national plan is a state-backed AI infrastructure push. This is the competition, guys. It's not. We need to quit competing against ourselves and realize that China is much bigger and much stronger when they put their national efforts behind it. So there's that going on. June 30th, Colorado deadline. An AI Act's enforcement date arrives while the federal override bill sits stuck in committee. So, Colorado can start to enforce some of these things, and that weakens that takes out a pillar, right, from underneath the foundation of some of these valuations. EU transparency rules. The AI Act provisions take effect, squeezing the memory and profiling features in consumer apps. And Trump has already said, listen, if you're going to start messing with our AI infrastructure, then we're going to start messing with your tariffs again. So there's going to be a lot more chatter coming up on that. So what are the three takeaways that you can act on? Well, first of all, diversify your model stack. I have pretty much all the models running right now. And you probably should too if you can afford it. Certainly get the free versions or the low-cost versions. Stay model agnostic. Know that there are benefits to each of the different models, and plan for live regulation. Plan for nothing to stay the same. The federal government to step in, state governments to step in, people to start thwarting what you can do with your AI. So that's your week in AI. Tech and policy just became the same story. Regulation is here to stay, and I think it's a problem, but we'll see how it affects us and how we can compete in the world stage. And thanks for joining me here. If you want to know more about the AI blind spot, because we all have a blind spot when it comes to AI, it's happening so fast, go to theAIblindspot.com. That's theAIblindspot.com. Link in the description. Like and subscribe. Thanks for being here, and I'll catch you next week when tons of new stuff is probably going to hit. I'll see you later.